If we've met in person over the last few years in a magical community, then you have probably at least once heard me talk about my concern for the rise of fascism, and you may have even debated about it before. And because I am now making content online more often, I thought I would bring that here and talk about anti-fascist magic. I have written some things down, so I may read these at times and then talk a little bit. And I will have organizations and books and some people to share with you, because I think it's really important to do so. And some people that are doing some really cool things. So magic is really the thing that I think has changed me on a very deep level and made me come to know myself. It is the thing that has really shaken me up. It's made me look at all my shadowy places. It's made me stay vigilant of my shadowy places. It's made me rearrange the sacred rooms within myself and remove again the pedestals that I once kneeled in front of. This is how I know that magic is a tool for the anti-fascist. It is a tool for those that want to walk in resistance. And here's the truth. Tyrants do not want spiritually sovereign people that genuinely care about others, because it really ruins their fucking day. Spiritually sovereign people do not easily give up their will and submit to the state, and they understand how pathetic it is to use said will to become a fucking ICE agent and remove children from their homes and schools. Magic is half about doing the internal work and half about doing the external work. It's about looking at those egoic tensions and those shadowy places and the locked closets that are within us. And it's about looking at our projections and our personas. And a huge part of magic for me is not just in the kind of spell work, even though that is, but it's about the journaling. It's about writing down when I think there's a projection in a relationship that I have, or when I'm projecting something onto someone else. And when I think I have something like a flicker of a shadow that I need to look at, that is a huge part of what I call magic, because it allows me to see more clearly and move in the world in a way that creates change. Like, if we see magic as creating change in conformity with our will, then that magic is an intentional act. And unfortunately, that means that at times, especially, I'll talk about myself here, that means that at times I recognize an uncomfortable truth, that the places where my energy is going or my money is being spent is not doing good. Like when I realized that a Loblaws, the large grocery chains here in Canada, was directly causing harm to workers, raising food prices unnecessarily, and supporting wars that I don't want to support. I recognize that for years I was grocery shopping there, and that's part of my will, kind of helping to create that, and I don't want to do that. And so there's moments along the way that are uncomfortable like that, and recognizing that by changing and becoming intentional and aware that we can create change. So that's just one example, but there's been many of those, many of those in my journey. Magic is also about recognizing that every living thing is holy, life delights in life. It's also about kind of recognizing that we are everything is kind of connected, right? So even the spiders in the cathedral are God. And that's a way that I move through the world. That's a shift that happened for me along my magical journey. And I think that directly ties to being anti-fascist. But before you kind of think that's me saying, oh, this is all love and light, I am not saying that. I think it is perfectly okay to clock a fascist upside the head, and that Christ may have had many good ideas, but turning the other cheek was not one of them. In this way, I do think that spiritual sovereignty is really important to my own anti-fascist mysticism, because of that removal of pedestals and recognizing when I am maybe putting another person way up on a pedestal, or I'm starting to put another person up on a pedestal, or having the ideals that somebody has to be perfect or is the ultimate authority on something, because I do think that those ideals and those pedestals can be used as tools for tyrants. So for me, in my spiritual practice, that means not seeing priests as the final word of God, not seeing others as the ultimate authority on something, rejecting the idea of perfect saints. And it includes side-eyeing and addressing every time a representative of the people tries to use the divine right of kings to justify their tyrannical ways. It means knowing that the conscious mystic's will isn't going to be used for someone else's nationalism, authoritarianism, or absolutism. And I do think spiritual sovereignty does not mean divorcing oneself from their community and being an active participant in their community. That is another thing that I have learned on my spiritual journey. I, started to get into this idea of the divine right of kings. What does that mean? How is that being used throughout history? And it was really interesting to see that, from Charlemagne and all the other kings kind of like coming to say that they had the divine right of rule and did not have to listen to the people, and kind of made it a hierarchical top-down thing because they were divinely appointed by providence or by a higher power. And they even at times would mess with food supplies and things like that until people got hungry and angry, and then they would do something to push food back into the community, and the people would say thank you and think that the person was divinely appointed because the king solved it, when really the king started the problem. So that was a whole journey. Something that I'm not going to get into further here, but it's interesting to see how that kind of starts. I think that's also why I do enjoy the concept that everyone has the right to spiritual sovereignty, and everyone has the right to see themselves as a king, a queen, or as royalty in their own right. So I also think, obviously, that magic is also about showing up for your community and taking different actions, and I've really been seeing and witnessing a lot of really cool things happening within the magical community. And I have been watching different videos, and I have been seeing different posts and people talking about finding your way of being part of the resistance. Not every person is going to have the same role, and that's okay. And I think that is a really crucial thing also, and finding that for yourself. And I know for me, a lot of what I can do is I can show up to different events, I can volunteer, I can give money to places, and I can share posts on social media. But I think it is about evaluating that for yourself and recognizing what you can do and if it fits you as a person. And I do see people in the magical community making art and posting on social media and even getting strategic about it, like Serena, who she's really big into Persephone, and then she posted about how she was not going to work with Persephone anymore, and then if you swipe, it's all about fuck ice, abolish ice. So there's all these kind of strategic ways to get people engaged with what you're saying and what you're talking about when it comes to anti-fascism and fuck ice. I'm witnessing some amazing meme magic from Kellyanne Maddox and a few others, and I am witnessing zine making workshops and spells being cast, and funding and organizing and putting money into the hands of people who can use it for good. I'm seeing letter writing workshops at cafes, and I know here in my local area there's letter writing workshops at the local library, and I am seeing tarot spreads that say fuck ice. And here in my area, I am seeing and standing in protests for a free Palestine and protests against corporations and weapons manufacturers. And yes, it is all connected. I think that if anybody here has read the 40 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, you will recognize that one of the things that he talks about is when people in power will have this notion, they want to do something, but they can't come out and say it, so they will say the opposite. That is directly how I see Trump's Board of Peace. Trump's Board of Peace, what the fuck is that? It's called ethnic cleansing. So I think part of magic is also like reading those types of books, recognizing how power works in the world, recognizing how fuckery hides itself in the world, and when we can recognize it, we can do something about it. To me, I think that's kind of like an obvious one, but I think that it does happen. And all of these things that I'm talking about, all of the kind of magical work that I have been doing internally and moving through into my community is all a direct result of community. It's all a direct result of the magicians and witches and people who are posting and making content and educating. I would not be the person that I am today without those people doing that work, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think that when people do speak up and post and share, that it makes it so that people realize that they're not alone, but it also makes it so that we can move towards this tipping point, because fascism kind of lives in silence and lives in fear and grows in silence and fear. And if we can show that we're not alone, we can reach that tipping point and fascism doesn't stand a chance. And when I'm talking about magic, I also think this is a really powerful magic of just a no regrets, like the magic of no regrets. If you look back on your life, and you look back to this time, and you recognize that you stood up against this, that you stood up against fascism, that you were resistant and against ICE, and you took action, and you wrote letters, and you called in, and you worked your magic as a form of resistance. You know, like, that's a magic of no regrets. And it's kind of recognizing that from this moment onward, from whenever it was that you recognize that all the shit was going on, and then you recognize that this isn't new, and that the reason that maybe you didn't recognize certain things is because of your privilege, or I'm speaking for me, you know, from that moment forward, you recognize that your magic is always going to be anti-fascist, is always going to be resistant against oppression and injustice and tyranny, and that this is not a one-time thing. This is a lifetime thing. This is until I'm dead. And that is extremely powerful, because now you are a magician in my eyes. When you get to that stage, when you realize that this is a never, you know, you want it to be something that ends, but in reality, you know, I'm gonna be alive for however many years, you know, I'm not going to live forever. And so the reality of it is that for the rest of my life, if I say that I am a magician, that means standing up for these things. And that, I mean, that's for being a magician, being a witch, being an occultist. I do not recognize any magician, witch, or occultist going forward that says they are working magic but are not going to stand up against fascism, tyranny, injustice of any kind. So it is in that moment, I think, that one truly steps into being a magician. One truly steps into being a witch. And for me, when I realized that, that was extremely powerful. And again, that means that I am and have been cloaked in privilege, because there are people that have known this, and they've had to know this, and they have been born into having to know this, and having to, from a very, very early age, recognize these things about the world. In magic, there's also this concept of joy. And so I think for me, it's also having joy in the resistance, having joy in practicing anti-fascist magic, having joy in working against forms of injustice. And that's not in me saying that we should be happy that these things are happening. Please do never take it that way. What I'm saying is that in the world today, the reality of it is that these things are rising, and that it is my supreme joy to practice anti-fascist magic and recognize that my will is never going to submit to that kind of shit. And personally, one of the shifts that has happened for me as I have stepped more into myself, or into my magic, and coming to own, you know, this sort of spiritual sovereignty, is finding the center in myself so that I can have and engage in conversations with people, especially if I recognize that they may be slipping into some kind of sketchy ideology. I can have conversations with people. I can engage them in conversations while setting boundaries, because I do that in the hopes of there being some kind of conscious shift for them. I also, in magic, there's also this line like, fear neither man nor spirit, and I've come to recognize that as, it's not about not being scared. To me, it's like recognizing that I acknowledge those feelings and that I can move in these different sort of like rebellious, defiant ways against the shit that's happening anyway. And I also think that it's recognizing that the feelings of being scared and of being really angry are valid, and that it would be really weird if you didn't have those feelings when you see people taking dehumanizing behavior or dehumanizing language or violence and the rise of tyranny and fascism. Like, if you're not angry, that would be kind of weird. So in the description, I will leave some organizations such as Arms Embargo Now. They also, on Arms Embargo Now, they also have like these printouts, so you can print out and, like, if you want, you can put things around your community if you're into that. There's also ways of sending money. They have a newsletter. They have email like templates that you can use to send to different members of parliament and things like that. Witches for Palestine sometimes does some workshops and things, and then they're able to send money to places that can use it for Palestinians in need. And I did leave the Yellowhead Institute because they have a really good land back course, and within that course there's a video about the Kelowna Keepers and how big corporations are coming in and trying to push people out of their land and infringe on land rights. And these land keepers, these keepers of the land, are trying to hold it down and stop these people from coming in and mining everything and taking everything, and just pushing people out and destroying the land there. And I've added that because I do think that everything is connected. A few people I've added below. One of them is Adriana DeFazio, and she is a Buddhist, and she has created a year-long radical Buddhist study that talks about how Buddhism and the Buddhist spirituality is directly tied to liberation. I signed up for that, and she has different payment plans, and I'm not really sure if you can still get in, but I think that it might run again next year, and I wanted to put this in case it did and leave the link to her work, because her work and her work on Substack is amazing, and I think that what she is doing is amazing work for the Buddhist community and for the larger spiritual community, and how spirituality is not divorced from liberation and direct action. And I will share a few books now. Last year I got Revolutionary Witchcraft, and one of my favorite parts in it is Magic in Action, a Rite of Initiation. And the author Sarah Lands really takes you through all the different things that you can do and why witchcraft is revolutionary, or can be revolutionary and be used for magic for the resistance. I got Fascism, what it is and how to fight it, and this book actually taught me a lot about how, I underlined a few sentences, like how fascism actually works in institutions, and in institutions that hold up sovereignty and individual rights and freedoms for people, and they attack institutions of education and workers' rights, hospitals, and things like that. And by just reading and knowing kind of like the playbook, if you will, the fascist playbook, I think you can be aware and you can work your magic a lot more intentionally. And this is a new one. I haven't read it yet. I am really excited to dive in. I just received it recently, but I know that I already know it's going to be good, so I'm going to share it here in case anybody else wants to pick it up and read it. It's called Becoming Abolitionists, Police, Protests, and the Pursuit of Freedom by Dereka Purnell. And on the back it says, for centuries, activists in the United States have tried to reform the police, from community policing initiatives to increasing diversity. Nothing has stopped cops from killing about 3 people a day. Millions still protest because these solutions do not match the problem. Police reforms cannot end police violence. And I'm going to dive in and read this. I obviously think that's important. I read an article recently that said that ICE already in 2026, I think, in the past year has killed 32 or 36 people that have been in custody, and I think that number might be more because that's the number that we're getting that the news has put out, and I think it was put out by The Guardian. So that is highly concerning. And a reason why I think that I want to talk about these things, and I think talking about things is good. I think having direct talk about things is good, because it makes people not alone, but also leaves room for understanding and for educating. And I know for me, that is a huge part of this, of course, is just being open to learning, being open to listening, and like taking action and sharing things when I can. So I have left a few more organizations, a few people to check out, and I've listed my books in the description. So if you want to, feel free to look through those and see different people, organizations to support if you would like to, if you have the means to. And thank you for, if you made it to the end of this video, for watching. And please do let me know if you have any people for me to check out, any organizations for me to explore, any books for me to read. I am very open to learning. I'm open to changing. I am open to, I'm very curious person. So send them my way, and I'm open to supporting and actively sending money when and where I can. So please do send me those things. So thank you for being here. Let's use our magic, and I will see you soon.